Brown Berets, a Chicano identity.
The term Chicano has not always had a powerful definition to it. Quite the contrary, it was used to insult and offend the Mexican American community. During the mid-1960s, we see a resurgence of the term by the very people who it intended to offend. They adopted the term to embrace their culture, their ancestors, and give themselves a rightful place in society to be seen as mere humans. One of the youth groups who embraced the term Chicano were the Brown Berets.
It was the political evolution of a group of young Chicanos in East LA, from being involved in community civic-minded activities as young citizens for community action, and then becoming culturally aware of their background, their history, their race, and becoming young Chicanos for community action.
The Brown Berets were not the first militant organization of youth targeting the problems of their community that involved police brutality, educational discrimination, access to health care, along with other issues. The Brown Berets were inspired by the Black Panthers. After the Watts riots in 1965, the Black Panthers were established October 1966 in Oakland, California, and dubbed themselves as revolutionary Black nationalists and socialists. Their heart in self-determination and boldness to push for the right to be armed to defend their neighborhoods inspired and provoked the Brown Berets to start involving themselves in the betterment of their community. Among the clear similarities that can be seen by the Black Panthers and Brown Berets, we see this evidently through the creation of the 10-point program, first created by the Black Panthers and a few years later by the Brown Berets. The Brown Berets' 10-point program is a list of 10 demands that varied from urging the unification of people of color to regulation of the police and the demand for the right to arms. An instance of unification amongst the Black Panthers and the Brown Berets were the organizing of protests to free Huey Newton from jail and standing together in the Poor People's Campaign in 1968 in an effort to gain economic justice for poor people.
The Brown Berets, just like the Black Panthers, were presented to the public as dangerous, armed people of color that were only created to disturb the peace of American society. By further investigating the aid they provided to their community, anyone will notice the great resources they created without any intentions of malice. The free breakfast for kids provided food for children in East LA due to their low socioeconomic status that the Mexican community faced in the late 1960s. Along with providing food for their young children, they had free clinics, known as El Barrio Free Clinic, which were not limited to just evaluating physical health, but as well as psychological needs and assisting in alcohol and drug counseling. Besides assisting to start up local programs in their neighborhoods, the Brown Berets were community organizers. In 1968, the Brown Berets were at the forefront of organizing the largest school walkout in Los Angeles. The Chicano community was suffering a 60 to 70% dropout rate and had very little to no teachers of color in schools where the majority of the students were Mexican. Besides, all of the students were discouraged from going into higher education, but pushed to seek working in low-paying jobs. The Brown Berets organized high school students in East LA to walk out and demand the school district in Los Angeles to teach Mexican American courses, hire more brown teachers, better school conditions, and add bilingual education. Thousands of students walked out for 2 weeks and demanded all these points to be met.
The administrators are saying that we're disrupting the educational process. That's not so. the educational process of Mexican Americans for over 20 years in East Los Angeles and throughout the Southwest has been disrupted by its failure to communicate with the Mexican American. That is the disruption. When 57% of the students at Garfield drop out year after year, there has to be a problem. We're not operating in a vacuum. There's social injustice.
Start moving from here. Quiero los chavales que se descuenten de aquí porque ahorita va a ir un pedo en la fregada. So everybody starts splitting, man. I mean it.
Dicen que ando alborotando porque con mi raza quiero despertar. Tanta injusticia me está rodeando, ya no me aguanto, yo quiero pelear. Yo soy tu hermano, yo soy chicano, dame tu mano, vamos a volar. Si sangra mi hermano, yo también sangro, la herida es igual.
After the East LA walkouts, the Brown Berets served as security for Chicano movement leaders like Sal Castro, a Lincoln High School teacher who was arrested for being an organizer of the walkouts. We see them as protection for Reyes Tijerina, who advocated that communal lands in Nuevo Mexico be returned to Mexican families whose lands were stripped away from them by the unmet Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848. They also served to protect Cesar Chavez, the founder of the United Farm Workers Union and one of the organizers for the Delano grape strike. We see Brown Berets as keepers of the peace in the First Chicano Youth Conference in Denver, Colorado, 1969, and East Los Angeles Moratorium of 1970. At the height of the Vietnam War, the Brown Berets led the Chicano community in protest of the high number of Chicano deaths in the war. The Brown Berets made very bold moves when they traveled the U.S. Southwest in 1971 to educate more than 80 urban Chicano neighborhoods about Mexican American studies and gave strategies to organize and lead the demonstrations.
Other action taken by the Brown Berets was the occupation of Catalina Island in 1972, Project Tecolote. The purpose for Project Tecolote was to bring awareness of the injustices made on the Mexican people by the U.S. government through the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and their lands having been taken away from them.
Could you explain the treaty that you're following that brought you to this island?
Well, the treaty is the treaty between the United States and Mexico, a treaty of peace, of which goes back to Article 5. And Article 5 states the boundaries of the United States between the United States and Mexico, of which state that the boundaries are all the way down to Texas, from Texas to Colorado, from Colorado to northern tip of California, all the way down 3 leagues south of San Diego and up to the Pacific Ocean. That means up to San Pedro over there. And the boundary of the United States is up to the Pacific. In other words, these islands do not belong to the United States. These islands are Mexican territories. These islands belong to the Mexicans.
They intended to occupy these lands for as much as they could, but it wasn't until 23 days later that the police were called to put an end to the occupation.
The purpose of the Brown Berets was community engagement for the purpose of self-determination. Though positive and peaceful actions were taken, the Brown Berets were seen as a terrorist group by the FBI and local police, and were successfully infiltrated with the sole purpose of dismantling the organization from within. In this photo of a march, we see the leaders of the Brown Berets followed by other members and the community. The next photo, once labeled, we see that among the leaders to the far left is Bob Acosta, an undercover sheriff. Today, the Brown Berets continue to arm themselves with the power of knowledge, community, and the fight against white supremacy and oppression.